Okay, welcome back, everyone. I went next door to my office and I picked up the report. Maryland State Senate bill legalizes infanticide up to 28 days after birth. Question. Prophecy refers to 10 nations in Europe at the end time. Well, that's what has been assumed. But how many nations are in NATO right now? 28. Okay. And if 2 more join them, that'll be 30. Okay. So the answer is this. The economic world is set up 10 economic zones around the world. Because it says in Revelation 17, let's go back there and read it. One rule. Whenever you're around discussing the Bible, get out the Bible and look at it. Okay. This is about Babylon the Great. Oh, and there's another article that is out which analyzes Malachi Martin. How many have heard of Malachi Martin? He has written a lot of things concerning the Vatican and the political people in Europe. And Klaus Schwab, the leader of the World Economic Forum, despises the Catholic Church. But in the meetings that they have had, they've all agreed. Now they have secret meetings with 12 leading people. And they have an empty chair with a folder on it. And that empty chair is for the Great Spirit. So I'll leave you to figure out who that is. But they all agreed, even though we hate and despise the Catholic Church, we need them in order to complete our plan. Okay? So, their plan is to get a pope in there that's friendly toward what they want to do economically. See? So when it comes around, and the beast, it finally organized as a viable, how should we say, alliance of nations, and the beast is personified in one person, and the false prophet is with who? The beast. And the two of them together. Now with miracles, covered that last week. Think of how they're going to deceive everyone into accepting it. Because it says in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, because they didn't receive the love of the truth, God will give them over to a powerful delusion. They will believe it. And it says here that these 10 kings, let me see if I can find it. Verse 12, Revelation 17. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. So in other words, there will be a leader for each of these 10 economic areas of the world, okay? They're not kings, they're not rulers, but they will be made that, okay? But receive authority as kings for 1 hour with the beast. And that will be to fight Christ. Okay? So, the thing with 10 nations in the past, Won't happen that way. See, a lot of things that we assume are taken for granted and have believed don't work out the way that a lot of people think. Okay? Question concerning those who were in Matthew 27, 52, 53. Now that's where, when there was the earthquake when Jesus died, boom, split open the graves, and after Jesus' resurrection, they came back to life and went into Jerusalem. Now, imagine if you were one of the relatives of those who had died. Now, these are those who died recently, okay? Because no one would recognize someone who died 100 years ago and come up to the door. Let me in. Who are you? Well, I died 100 years ago. I don't believe you. Okay? But if it was one of your relatives who died within, say, the last month, hello, who is it? It's your Aunt Martha. Really? It's you. Okay. Then I imagine that they ended up being in the church. So they'll probably be in the first resurrection. Okay. How long did they live? At least some among the, yes, were they, some of them among the 120 on Pentecost? Could very well have been. See? We don't know. We can account for how many. Okay? The 11, right? Then we can account for the 70, correct? Then we can account for Mary and his three brothers. Okay? Then we can look at Martha and Mary and Lazarus. See? So we can come up with a good number, and maybe some of those who were raised at that time, as listed there in Matthew 27, would be among the 120. Okay? Now, let's go forward. Christ and the 12 at Passover. Question, I've always been curious to know why Christ had the Passover with the 12 and not with the 12 and their families. Some people use this scenario to justify their erroneous thinking that the original Passover in Egypt was in the afternoon of the 14th. I don't know where you got that, okay? We'll cover that next week, see? Christ had the authority to change the time, but he didn't. That's why if you do not have the Passover book, you get it, okay? The Christian Passover, when should it be observed? On the 14th or the 15th? Now, the reason that there has to be so much about the Passover is because that is the heart and core of what everything that we do is all about. Because that puts us in a covenant relationship with God. See? So that's why there's so much difficulty and controversy concerning the Passover, because Satan wants to confuse, destroy, and besmirch and get rid of the Passover. And that's why the book is 500 pages. And that's why that book is a mammoth, stable source of doctrine, examining all the false interpretations of people. And we send it out with a 44-year-old paper written by Graby and Kuhn to try and bring into Worldwide Church of God a Jewish 15th Passover. And they couldn't do it. So they convinced Garner Ted Armstrong to believe that the Passover always was on the 15th, and that what Jesus did was a special supper or pre-Passover. And it's okay to call it the Lord's Supper, in spite of the fact that Paul said, you are not to eat the Lord's Supper. And he told them in 1 Corinthians 11, if anyone is hungry, you eat at home and then come to the Passover. Okay? So if you don't have the book, you need the book. Here it is. This is the second edition, right here. Christian Passover. Now, we've made it a little smaller, 7 by 10, and it weighs a little less. But need everything that you need to know about the Passover. And this did not come about without a lot of study, without a lot of research and everything. It's amazing what God opened up to our understanding during that time. So you get that. I have a couple of questions for you. Could you answer the question of which of the nations of Northern Europe are the tribes of Israel? Well, we don't know exactly how they are, but Reuben is France, Norway is Benjamin, Sweden is Naphtali, Finland is Issachar, Denmark is half Jewish and half Dan, Zebulun is Holland, Britain is Ephraim, Scotland is Jewish, and America is Manasseh. So that pretty well takes care of them. If I missed any, they're mixed in with it too. Ireland, yes, Dan. That's it. Thank you. Okay. Now you get our book, America and Britain in Prophecy. Okay. My question is, how do people come up with 6,000 years for man? Number one, it's not in the Bible. Okay. Number two, that is just a supposition based upon the fact, let's go back here to 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, okay? 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and they base it on this, and they make a projection from it, okay? Verse 8. Now, beloved, do not let this one fact be hidden from you, that with the Lord, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. So they extrapolate from this that since we have the Sabbath day, and that also pictures the millennium, therefore, man's number is 6. So God has given mankind 6,000 years. Well, we passed the 6,000 years some time ago. So the question becomes, if it is 6,000 years, how does God figure it? Well, God hasn't told us. All right? Also following, I was inspired to write to a minister who said that we would not need time to be taught after the resurrection. He believes in a trumpet's resurrection. Okay, of course we're going to have to be taught. You're going to inherit a body that is immortal. How does that work? We're going to be given a new language, all of us at the same time, because we're going to have to communicate with each other and Christ with us. So when we come back to the earth, we'll know what we're doing. Can you imagine if you have a resurrection and we're not given all one language at that time? Okay. Can God do that? Certainly. Did he not do it when he created Adam and Eve? Put a language right in their brain. Okay? So yes, no man can know the hour or the time. That's correct. We can know the season. Jesus told us we could. Okay, question? Question about the resurrection. In the instant, in the twinkling of an eye at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, the dead shall be raised incorruptible, we shall be changed. 1 Corinthians 15:52. And he shall send his angels out with a great sound of a trumpet, and shall gather together from the four winds, Matthew 24. Okay. And he analyzes everything that is going to take place on the sea of glass. Okay. He mentioned some of them. Okay, so I'll just read what he's written down here. This is some of them. When we come to Pentecost, we'll go to it in detail. We have the wedding in heaven, Revelation 19:1 through 7. We have the marriage supper in heaven, Revelation 19:9. We have the 7 last plagues that we watch while we're up on the sea of glass. Now, please understand that heaven is in the clouds. So that should be actually in the atmosphere above the earth, not heaven where God's throne may be, wherever that is. And then we'll all come down with the clouds with Christ. All right? Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, here's another one. Question. Isn't it possible that the mystery of Paul is talking about the Gentiles, Ephesians 3? No, the mystery is how we're going to become the sons and daughters of God. And that's through the resurrection. Okay. Another mystery is Christ in us, the hope of glory. Okay. Let's come to Colossians, the 1st chapter. Yes, I think I covered this last week, but we'll just look at it again. Okay, verse 27, Colossians, the 1st chapter. Okay. To whom God did will to make known. See, now isn't that something? What you know, God willed to make it known to you. See? And that's why every elder needs to study and study and study and study and study to know the Word of God the way it should be, because we are the ones to teach the brethren so that they will know. See? To whom God did will to make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. The mystery is the Holy Spirit. That's part of it. It's also the mystery of the kingdom of God and how it's coming. Okay? Question is, if our spirit returns to God at death, then is it necessary to have a grave burial? Okay. Well, it's preferable to have a burial, but cremation is your question. Cremation is just a fast disintegration of the body to dust. Okay? But it's far preferable to have that. Yes, then the one here, Psalm 27:28, when you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, O Lord, I will seek. Okay? How do we seek the face of God? Well, we have to be at the resurrection to do that. So that means that we do everything to attain the resurrection. And it says in Revelation 22, we will see him face to face. Okay? 1 Thessalonians 5:17 and 18 says, pray unceasingly. Let me tell you this. The longer you have the Holy Spirit of God, and the more that you're faithful in prayer, the more that you will find yourself continually praying throughout the day, even in the various tasks that you do. See? That's what it means by that, see? So that you're in contact with God all the time. Now, to answer your question concerning the 42 months, 3.5 years, 1,260 days, and all of that, the 42 months and 1,260 days are not equal. They don't begin at the same time, they don't end at the same time. So we did have a couple of things to correct on that big chart, so we should be getting it back this week. But if you want the chart, you will see that everything having to do with the saints, that all ends on Pentecost. Okay? That's why you need to understand that the resurrection is on Pentecost. Because from the time from Pentecost to trumpets, we'll be on the sea of glass up in the clouds, then we'll come back to earth with Christ on trumpets. And we will all be fully instructed on what we are to do. Okay? So you get that chart and you will see it. Okay? Okay, my question is, since I lost a friend, will we be able to see our loved ones again? Yes, we will. You have also said that when we are in the resurrection, we'll have a new name and be a spirit being. How will we know one another? Well, the only way I can answer that question is be there and you'll find out. See? We don't know. Who initiated the doctrinal committee? This is not really a Bible question, more about church history. You touched on it on this in the past briefly. It would be very interesting to know more details for the record, okay? I'm hoping you could recount the details of the doctrinal committee that was formed in Worldwide Church of God. Now that's very interesting, see? Now it sounds like that would be a good thing. We do need to have doctrine, correct? Okay. But that happened at the time when there was a lot of turmoil. Okay. And that was set up not to find the truth of the Bible, but to get all the political infiltrators on that committee to change the doctrines. Because you don't realize that in Worldwide Church of God, there were a lot of infiltrators. How many of them knew each other? I do not know. But they did know each other. And I had arguments with them. Arguments about the Passover. I had to fight them to publish the first edition of the Harmony. I had to fight all the evangelists from Ted Armstrong down. They all lost. Because I was making it doctrinally correct, and I wasn't breaking any law of God, and I wasn't breaking any law of the land. To make a long story short, after it was published, the brethren got it, they were happy to get it, and Mrs. Stiles Herbert Armstrong's personal secretary, got a copy of it, looked at it, made an appointment with Herbert Armstrong for me to come up and give him an autographed copy. Okay? Well, that was interesting. What I did. Now, for those sitting here, you can see those 4 pictures up on the wall. So if you have the harmony or the Bible, because I put them in the Bible too, we have the hand-drawn pictures of the temple. And that was done by J. Vance. He was an architectural renderer. So it was his job to draw those with a rapidograph pen. So what I did, I had those made in 12 by 18 in frame, black frame, little black frame around it, and I took those with me when I went to see Herbert Armstrong. Now, we had spent time before at various times. I won't get into that, and they were all good. Okay. So when I got up there, showed him the book, we talked about it, and then I said, Mr. Armstrong, I have something here for you. Now, this was right after the auditorium was finished. Okay? And I had all the pictures of the temple on the 12 by 18. All framed, nice glass on the front of it. And I said, Mr. Armstrong, I want to give these to you. So he looked at them and he got so excited. He almost became unglued. He was so thrilled to get those. And he went to his desk and he pushed the button and told Mrs. Stiles, you call Bob Smith, the interior decorator, and come in and get these pictures because I want them hung in the auditorium. And there was a little alcove between the 2 classrooms in the lower first level of the auditorium, and he had them hung right there. See? Now, the moral of the story is this. Regardless of what persecution or opposition that you have, you stick to the truth. You do not back down. And I'll tell you one thing. Even one of my friends, I won't name him, but it was a real disappointment because before it was published, so we're backing up in time a little bit, that he was asked by Ted Armstrong to take me out to dinner and to get me to not publish the Harmony of the Gospel. Okay? So I didn't find that out until after dinner, and we're standing in the parking lot right at where the administration building was, and he brought it up to me. And I looked at him and I pointed my finger right in his face. I said, I have a message for Ted Armstrong. You tell him that when this book is published, and it will be published, and if I'm disfellowshipped, he's going to have a hard time telling the brethren why he disfellowshipped someone for making the truth available in a book. And I walked away. Never spoke to him after that again. Okay. So, back to this doctrinal committee. Time frame. It was when the infiltrators knew they had the upper hand. And that's when they began to change everything. Okay? Dr. Dorothy was excluded. As a matter of fact, he was relieved of his Greek class, and a politician, Lester Graby, was put in charge of it. Well, When I wanted to learn Greek, I got a hold of Dr. Dorothy, and the Harmony was already published, so I had some money from that because I sold it for $6.95. Okay, had 10,000 printed. Okay, and that all sold out within a year. Okay, but wanted to learn Greek because I knew that I had to. So I came to Dr. Dorothy and I said, I'd like to learn Greek, and I would like you to be the teacher, because they relieved him of it. They just took it from him, political, what you call oblique aberrasque, and that is you promote him sideways into nothingness. Okay? So I said, I'll pay you $1,500 a semester. And he said, okay. So he contacted others that wanted him to teach the Greek, and we needed a place to meet. So, guess where we met? Those of you who know where the library is, or was, okay? Herbert Armstrong had his office up on the 3rd level. But when the administration building was built, he moved his office over there. So here's this office, empty. Beautiful rosewood office. So right there in Herbert Armstrong's office, we had the Greek class. See? Another lesson. God always works things out. See? So we started out with 10, and after 4 weeks, everybody but Carl and I dropped out, and Carl lasted another 4 weeks. So from that time on, I kept my bargain with Dr. Dorothy and had private tutoring, and we got in 2 years of Greek in 1. Okay? So that's how I got my Greek education. Now, the thing that's important is this. I did learn it, and I've been learning and studying it and learning more ever since. Okay? But if anyone wanted to find out, how did Fred Coulter learn Greek? Where can you prove that you learned it? I can't. Because Dr. Dorothy is no longer here. But that gave me the knowledge and information, and with God's help and inspiration, to when the time came to begin translating, and Dr. Dorothy, through the early part of the 90s, kept telling me, Fred, translate, Fred, translate, Fred, translate. So I finally did. What happened was this. That time we had a small group of 7. And we went through the whole book of John. And that took about 3 years. Ended up with 26 on the study through the scriptures in John, and 26, these are hour-and-a-half cassettes at that time, subtitles, grace, justification, and all of that. And so we got done with that, and I asked the brethren, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to study more like we did with John. And I said, okay, How about if we do the general epistles and I'll make a study translation? See? So I didn't sit down and say, now, Fred Coulter, why don't you do the New Testament? I started with James, then we had to study, and we got the book, General Epistles. Okay? And then 1st, 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and Jude. Okay? Then about that time, the second edition of the Harmony was just about sold out. So that meant what? I had to translate Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. See? And none of this was thought in my mind at that time to do the New Testament until I got the gender neuter homosexual New Testament, the Revised Standard Version, sent to me from England. And I was reading in the front of it. They were telling how they did their translating and trying to eliminate any gender identification. So I came to the place where they explained about God the Father. And they said his name was a metaphor. A name is not a metaphor. Okay? He's the Father. There's no metaphoring anything. So therefore, since it's a metaphor, we translated it father/mother. Now, do you realize how absolutely egregious that is in God's sight? To have the audacity to take the name of the Father, which is holy, and he's the sovereign ruler of the universe, and make it Father, Mother, to please the homosexual community. So I stood there in my office, right in front of my library, reading that. And I was astonished. And I said to myself and prayed right at that time, if we let this stand without an answer, God is going to judge us. So that's the time that I decided to do the New Testament. See? And yes, those things get a little difficult. But we have to do them. See? Now, let me finish with this. I think that's just about all. There might be some others. We'll try and catch it. Okay? Brethren, we're heading in to really, really difficult times. Okay? We need to pray for each other. We need to pray for all the brethren. We need to pray for all the elders. We need to pray for those that God is going to send. It's going to get worse than you have ever imagined. What are you going to do with $10 a gallon for gasoline? What are you going to do when a loaf of bread costs $10? We better be wise and store up some food. I'm telling you, because it's going to get difficult. And at the same time, we're going to be attacked with those with false doctrine. So now's the time that we get right with God and ask for strength in the days that we're living in. See? Well, I better end there. So thanks for tuning in to the live streaming. and we'll see you next Sabbath.